Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast with Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about homesteading. Basically, I wanted to get into kind of things you needed to look into if you want to live off grid or set up your homestead, or, what kind of things when you're looking to buy a homestead property, or when you're trying to make your property self-sufficient. If you want to live that self-sufficient lifestyle. And that's really what prepping is being able to be in control. And in order to be in control, it really helps if you're able to provide for yourself. And that's really what it comes down to. So that's where people go with that self-sufficient lifestyle and like that. That's why I think it kind of goes hand in hand with being a prepper, is when you're self-sufficient, you're not relying on the supply chain for food or for fuel or for heat or for lighting or for security. These are the things that you can do. So what kind of things could we do to make our property more self-sufficient? Or if we're picking out a property, what kind of things would we want to make it that we can handle our own needs? So there's a lot of different factors. There's food and security and heat and, electricity and all these different things that we use in our day to day. And sometimes there's alternatives. Maybe you don't need electricity in the traditional sense, but you need some kind of way to, create power and do things. Even if that's horsepower pulling your plows or whatever, you got to, find a way to make it work for your world. So I wanted to kind of explore some of the things you would need, some of the requirements to be self-sufficient, and to maybe be able to point out where you're maybe lacking in your own, areas. Like, hey, I don't really have this if the power goes out, or if the water from the town stops coming, or if I can't go to the grocery store, what happens? Let's look at where we might have shortcomings in our preps and see how we can make our homestead a little more self-sufficient. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. And let's see what we got. So let's maybe start with food. That's always a big one when people think self-sufficient. What kind of ideas you got there, Kevin?
Right. Well, I was actually just talking to the missus this morning about factory farming,
Okay.
And I love going to the grocery store and getting a steak and getting chicken.
Yes.
But, I really don't, if you're concerned at all about, that sort of thing, I think you can really cut a lot of that out by being self-sufficient, whether it's hunting and gardening or raising your own animals. There's a lot of options there that I think are probably wouldn't hurt anybody to look into a little bit more than what we're doing.
Right.
You want to start with hunting real quick?
Sure.
Depending on where you live, there's a lot of options that, that can make hunting a lot easier. I don't really support baiting animals, but if you're living out in the middle of nowhere and you've got to rely on that to get your food, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Like I said, it's illegal in a lot of places, but
not where I live.
Same thing with trapping.
Yeah.
Yep.
And maybe baiting animals means growing 2 apple trees in the back of your property that are fair game, you know?
Right. Right. I had a friend of mine that just grew corn in the back edge of his property.
Right.
And then he would just go out in his back porch whenever he saw something out there, and he'd be all set for, for a couple of months.
Yeah.
But,
and that's,
the other thing is, when it comes to hunting, you really can use, a lot more of the animal than most of us use. When it comes to skinning and tanning hides and all sorts of stuff. The Carhartt pants that we wear today, that's was replacing deerskin pants. And that's, deerskin is quality leather, and it doesn't last forever, but, it definitely works.
Yeah, blankets, whatever you got to do, that's a great way, but there's other ways to get meat too. And obviously don't forget, hunting isn't just deer. A lot of guys take bear
Right.
and, elk and all these other things we have in the Northwest and different things, mule deer and moose and other big impressive animals, can really add to your, pounds of meat in the freezer. But even if you're not maybe thinking, a lot of us, we've talked about, well, yeah, but if everybody's desperate, then, all the deer will run dry and there won't be any animals left. Well, all right, let's talk about rabbits or things you can grow on your own property. And I think also, don't forget about squirrels and things like that. The deer are going to disappear first, then the more exotics, the rabbits, the deer, and the snapping turtles and the whatever. And understanding how to utilize all these different animals that are available to you is going to be, a big asset. Realizing, hey, I can eat those bullfrogs that are freaking 10 pounds out in my yard. I was actually talking to a guy yesterday,
right.
And he's showing me, he's like, look at what I have at work. And for some reason, the property they have is attracting all these bullfrogs that are all like, 7-8 pounds and, ridiculous. And I'm like, that's insane. He's
really?
like, yeah, they're like cane toads, he's like, how is it happening? But, there's different things you can utilize out there. There's snakes and different things that people might get into, but also you can grow your own rabbits, and rabbits reproduce really quick. We've talked about it. That's something I'm actually planning on starting here on my new property. Is setting up about an acre to make a little rabbit farm. Chickens, obviously, we've talked about.
And,
go ahead.
Yeah, let's touch on rabbits for a minute here.
Okay.
I was just reading up on a guy who started with 1 male rabbit, 2 female rabbits.
Yeah, that's
and he said the first year, those 3 rabbits produced 600 pounds of meat.
Wow.
In 1 year,
That's
just from the offspring,
right.
as the grandparents. So that is crazy. I mean, 600 pounds a year. That's probably all the meat you're going to need.
Yeah, I mean,
And
typically we were feeding my family
1 rabbit
2 pounds. Yeah. And 1 rabbit a month for what?
Yeah, and he was saying he was selling 1 rabbit a month as a pet, and that was paying for all the rabbit feed for that entire month.
Not bad. Could you get what, 15,
right
20
there.
bucks?
I mean, rabbit feed isn't free, but yeah.
If you got land,
so I mean,
I don't know.
Rabbit food could also
be
rabbits
free.
are cute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they make
true.
like great
That's
toilet
true.
paper.
All right,
I heard that
let's
the
talk
poop
about
doesn't stick.
goats.
No. Goats?
They make great no, rabbits make great compost though. And we can get into that in a few minutes. But
you meant from their poop.
Straight over your garden, right into the bed. You don't have to do anything from their poop. I'm not talking about wiping with a rabbit, but
okay.
You can do that.
I heard a joke.
Goats, I've always been super excited about goats. My wife has refused to allow me to get goats. She says they have evil eyes because the slit goes crosswise.
Now, the selling point, I think how I won the wife over on goats is fainting goats. And I guess they're about 150
Right.
bucks
Everybody
here for a
loves
fainting
those.
goat. But you just walk up and they just fall over. It's just
Uh-huh.
funny. That's just a winning, that's a selling feature for me. She's like, oh, I really want them, but they're 150 bucks. And I'm like, buy two. Because they fall over. It amuses
It's
me.
worth the entertainment value alone. I've never seen this happen, so I'd be excited about having one.
Oh, they're pretty
Give it
cool.
a try. Just scare the shit out of it. Clown masks, all sorts of stuff.
I don't really know if they're the type of goats that you eat.
and
but,
they're really smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Goats are really are smart, and a milking goat can produce 1.5 quarts per day of milk. So I mean that's a good bit. Goat milk. If you haven't ever tried goat milk and you swear you're not gonna, give it a try, man. It's so worth it. It's better than regular milk in all the best milky ways that you can imagine. Cheese, right. Everything.
Cheese.
So
they do make good goat cheese.
Right. Goats are great for bugging out also. They can carry 25% of their own weight, and they can be trained to pull a cart behind them and carry even more.
I love a goat in a cart. Yeah.
But now I'm more excited about goats.
Yeah, you're going to have to get the wife
on board. The problem with goats is
they escape.
Yeah. The problem with goats is that, well, no, I mean, they do roam around, but they know where they live and they come back.
Okay.
But butchering goats is like the most awful shit you could ever have to do.
Okay.
Because you have to like gain the goat's trust and like creep up on it and pet it and then slit its throat when it's not expecting it. And it's just even the most like brutal people I know that do butcher stuff that don't, none of it phases them. They swear off not, butchering goats. They won't do it. So it's just something you're going to have to deal with if you have a goat. Sometimes you have to kill the things you love.
Oh, okay. That sounds good.
Or don't eat them. You can also do that.
Yeah.
But they have really great meat. They really are delicious. Another great thing for compost, you were saying chickens.
I think you're supposed to wait a little while on the chicken poop. Let it.
Yeah, you have to compost that in with your compost, right?
Right, with time. So that's good. So you have a lot of food and stuff coming from meat, but you can't live on meat alone. Like you need some roughage or you end up with pooping problems, is my understanding. No? Yeah, maybe.
Right, that's right. So let's get into gardening.
All right.
A lot of people get intimidated by gardening, but really it is the simplest shit you could do. Yeah, you set the garden up with some good soil and some good boxes in the ground, cut a section out of your lawn. You can do it anywhere. Dig up a shovelful and turn it over and stick your seeds in there. It's not a complicated thing. You can get as crazy as you want with mulch, with compost, with soil, with fencing it in from getting in there and eating your seed start, your seedlings. But the truth is you can start out easy. You can grow a tomato plant in your backyard in a corner of the yard and not even think about it the rest of the year until you start plucking tomatoes. And you can go as far or as light as you want. I would recommend everybody, no matter where they're at, start with something, anything. I
like it. No, that sounds right. I mean, you gotta, we had talked about this in depth, in other episodes. We've talked about being a gardener and things like that, and really understanding your soil, your area, your predators. By starting to do it on a small scale, a lot of people think, oh, if something bad happens, I'll start growing. But that's not going to work. I mean, it works to an extent, but it takes time. But there's also a learning curve. And it's so easy when you have the internet as a resource, when you can go to the local, store and buy the right, pest repellent or whatever, figure out what you need and your options or the right tools to cultivate or different things. Learn the hazards to your area now by doing a little bit and then plan on scaling up if you need to, later, rather than not doing anything. That's something, and having seeds on hand and stuff like that is going to be a thing. We discussed about how heirloom seeds, are something you can renew and reuse your seeds from season after season. Whereas if you buy GMO seeds, you can make an argument about that's bad and whatever. They do typically grow a lot better and easier. But the flip side is you can't reuse those seeds every year. And seeds, if they're stored properly, they can last a while.
That's sometimes the case,
yeah, but you're not keeping seeds forever. You're lucky to get 3 years really out of seeds. So, again, there are other options. Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely harvest the seeds every year from most of my plants, the ones that you can.
Yeah.
But and I've never gone more than 2 years holding on the seeds. But you really have to when you do it, you have to keep them dry and you have to keep them dark. You can just put them in an envelope and put them in a drawer. That's what I do, and they're fine. But you have to be careful that you don't screw those seeds up. It's a pain in the ass when you do all your planning and then realize nothing's growing after 3 weeks and
that's
realize
a little
you have to start
frustrating.
again from scratch.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely, where you miss your window of stuff to get in the ground if you have a shorter growing season and things like that. So definitely something to think about. We definitely have some other episodes where we go, deep into gardening if you guys want to, really have a better understanding. I know my wife is big on reaching out to the local, like agriculture things. There's a lot of college things and stuff like that where they'll, cooperatives and things like that, where they'll help you for free and, give you free advice or do free soil testing and kind of tell you what other people in your area are growing or what type of seeds. I know when I was back in New York, they had a lot of like seed clubs, and I think they were called like Hudson Valley Seeds or something like that. But the idea was they would pick strains of tomatoes and typical plants, vegetables, whatever, that grew well in our region. And they would take, seeds from people who grew locally and they thrive. And if you can find seeds that are local to your area and that thrive in your area, you'll even do better, You'll work again. So maybe look for something like that in your area, your region, seeds, even buying from a seed place that grows them in your region, or your type of soil, that kind of stuff. So you can do a little research. It just depends how involved you want to get. You don't need to get that deep into things, but it's not a bad place to start.
Even if you don't, want to get crazy about it, buying some vegetables and not being a stranger to your local like farm stands and your local produce stores and things like that. A lot of those people have a lot of knowledge that that you can get off of them when you're picking out plants and picking out vegetables.
Right. So definitely something to consider there. Now moving along. So part of having a garden, having a livestock, the next thing, kind of logical step, is security. Now, security can be for the full-on apocalypse prepper, where you're looking at how to defend your property, which is something you need to take seriously, I think. But also, you need to defend your property against predator, and that might be deer coming in and eating your garden. That could be coyotes and foxes and wolves coming in and taking your chickens. All that stuff. Maybe it's the woodchuck or the groundhog, depending on what you want to call it, coming in and eating all your broccoli and your lettuce.
Could be any little critter. And, one of the first steps in security when it comes to that sort of thing is dogs and cats. I'm not
dogs
a particular fan of cats. But, I mean, you can have outdoor cats that don't come in your house. And that seems like the perfect mix right there, Outdoor animals, semi-feral, let them be. You ain't got to pet the cat.
No.
Put a little bit of food and water out for it, and it'll take care of all the mice and all the other nonsense, all the little critters that are getting in your stuff.
It'll do the killing for you.
And those obnoxious little dogs, you know, the rat terriers and shit, they are fantastic at killing those things. You know, I can't stand those dogs, but I got one myself, and I have no woodchuck problems in my garden because that dog is a little vicious little monster. It went down in the last year. It went down in the burrow and chewed up all the baby woodchucks in there. Came out with blood and fur hanging out of its mouth, like, you know, wagging its tail. So sometimes those little
I'm great.
Yeah.
Yep.
And, you know, if you have bigger animals like goats and chickens and things, it wouldn't hurt to have a bigger size herding dog. You know, those animals are really helpful and instinctually know how to protect things and how to kind of keep them together and keep them in the places they're supposed to be at. You know, they're really instinctually good at that. So when a little bit of training goes a long way with those animals.
Right.
Now, fencing is also an important security for your gardening.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fence is huge. Fences keep, the bad things out. In theory, woodchucks can climb over some fences. Depends how high, depends what the fencing looks like. But
one trick I did with my garden fence is I buried the fence about 8 inches down. So that's going to keep anything from digging right through it.
Right.
And on the
I did that in New York, yeah.
On the top of the fence, it's basically a chicken wire fence. On the top of the fence, I don't have any like cross members because they use those cross members to get up and over top of it. But if the fence like wobbles when they get up there, they're not comfortable enough to go over the top of it generally. So
just takes the right critter.
Right. So, also you want to have a little bit of security for your stuff, your tools, your equipment, all that stuff can be very valuable if you use it all the time. And it's hard to get a replacement because of whatever your guys are going through.
And you don't want to throw away your effort, your work, and whatever you save up and buy a 4-wheeler, or you buy a bunch of rakes and hoes and things. And, I know my wife, who takes gardening pretty seriously, has like $70 hose and things like that. Some of the tools are not exactly cheap, but they're efficient, and you kind of get your money back, when they work properly. You save it in your back and your effort, and, having tools sharpened and taken care of is another thing, but security. So one of the things I'm doing here is we have, like lighting. My barn has a light, that turns on at night, and it's on all night long. That's actually pretty typical where I am. All the houses kind of, have night lights that are on all night to kind of keep an eye on the field and whatever. Mm-hmm. It's nice to be able to see out. Maybe depending how remote you are, maybe you look into thermal or night vision, being able to see things out there.
They have a lot of great, inexpensive solar lights that have come with their own battery setup and just turn on when the sun goes down.
Outbuildings that are way out.
Yep.
There's a company called SunForce that does a great job with that. That may be something you want to look into. As far as the solar lighting for something out there. I don't know. I bought some cheap LEDs for the one that's close, and doesn't. But the solar ain't bad either, especially if you live in one of those hot states where the sun's out all the time. It depends if you're covered by trees or whatever, or if you're, out in nature. So lighting is a great asset. Fencing is a great asset for security. Just being aware, paying attention, going outside at night, kind of keeping an eye. Now, I know like thermal sounds extreme and whatever, but if you're having problems like coyotes or, hogs coming through and tearing up your garden, wild hogs, people have that kind of stuff these days.
Yep.
It's nice to be able to see what's going on. And maybe $1,000 is worth not having your garden destroyed, you pay $3,000 or $2,000 or $7,000 for a 4-wheeler to make your life easier. But how easy is it to spend $1,000 on a thermal scope for your gun to not have to go out and redo your whole garden because a bunch of wild hogs got in and destroyed everything you've been working on for the last, 4 weeks, 6 weeks.
Right. And, the one great thing, wild hogs really are destructive. That's why I would recommend. Yeah, that's why I would recommend raising your own pigs. As much as I love bacon, your own pigs are hard to keep. Like, you have to be a pig farmer. That's your job,
Yeah.
But the good thing about wild pigs is that in most places you can just shoot those fuckers. Nobody cares about them. They're invasive. And most places you can just shoot them and kill them and get free bacon. So
free bacon.
Just heads up, if you're in Texas or if you live in any one of those, one of those places, a thermal scope to take those fucking pigs out, worth it 100%.
There you go. Or, now they have like $5.99, $6.99 night vision scopes from ATN.
They're really not that expensive anymore.
They come with
looking at $4,000 or $5,000 for one of those scopes, and that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, no, that's it. $5.99, but you're stuck with the infrared and some other stuff that I don't like. So I kind of am leaning towards the $1,300 for the thermal scope. But decide what's important to you. But night vision, if nothing else, $5.99, and you can take care of things that are getting in your critters in the nighttime. That's not a bad way to be. That or buy a $20 flashlight. You could go that way.
There you go.
Maybe that's the other option.
When we're touching on real quick, I wanted to talk about rechargeable batteries. A lot of the time, we haven't gotten into electricity yet, but a lot of the time, you have time periods when you can have excess electricity and time periods where you really got to conserve on those. And rechargeable batteries are great, especially, not just the batteries for flashlights and things like that. But, I got, I'm kind of a brand whore with DeWalt, and I kind of got on that just because the batteries are so versatile and the amount of stuff you can run off of those batteries. Flashlights, you can recharge up, power drills, power tools, radios. You can get any kind of attachment that those batteries will fit into and run any kind of equipment you need to. And let me just tell you this. The big draw about electricity is they're replacing a lot of hard work, Yes. Cut 10 boards with a handsaw and cut 10 boards with a skill saw, and you'll see
that electricity might be cool.
There's a big fucking difference between those two.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get off track there. I just wanted to touch on that.
You did get a little off track.
Yeah. We're still talking about security, and the first thing I would recommend when it comes to firearms and security and living off grid is have a 12 gauge. Just have one. Whether you love it or hate it, have it on the shelf and have different types of, buckshot, birdshot, slugs, have everything ready to go because it's a really versatile firearm.
Yeah. Actually, I was just talking to somebody recently, and, he was saying pretty much any time he's out, he keeps a 12 gauge out with him with a birdshot, or, 410 is probably even the better choice for this type of thing. But because when he's out in the garden or just doing yard work or riding the tractor, digging holes, or this guy's usually working on the shooting range or whatever, but whatever he's doing out in the yard, he keeps a shotgun handy, and it's for snakes. His big thing is for like copperheads and stuff, and not because he's not smart enough to avoid it and just stay away and whatever, but because of his dogs. And he's like, I'd rather kill the dogs snake and whatever.
When it comes to snakes, yeah.
Right. Then
that rattle doesn't mean shit to them.
Right. They're like, whatever, man, I'll kill you. And it doesn't always work out. So, that's one more aspect of security that, it doesn't have to be that, we're afraid the government's coming to get you. It's, hey, I need to take care of my shit. I need to take care of my animals. I need to take care of my little kids. I need to take care of things, people I care about. Well, that's how you do it, Be a problem solver, plan ahead. If you understand how things work and whatever, it doesn't hurt to have these tools available to you,
Right.
But
Now let's talk about. You want to talk about a little bit? Talk on tools a little bit before we. Or do
Yeah.
you want to?
no, tools are great.
All right. So when it comes to off-grid living, obviously, I just said, having power tools that you can use is a huge step up.
Yes.
But you're not going to be able to use power tools for everything, and so there are some hand tools that you really should have on hand. First off, I want to talk about just digging tools, whether it's for your garden or post hole diggers for your fencing. Pick and a shovel can get a lot of work done. It's hard work. You're going to get blisters, but that's how life works, man.
So
That's
I
how
just redid the floor in my house, and I had like some tile that was like glued to like Lawan or something like that. Think like 1/4-inch plywood, right? And it was stapled down 1,000 places, and basically you needed a big pry bar to pull up this. Well, I have the greatest pry bar. It's called Gorilla Bar. It's the company that made it, and it just has the right angles, and it's been great for everything. Well, because I had just moved, I hadn't unpacked the right box, and I couldn't find it. So I found it since, but at the time I couldn't find it, and I'm tearing open. What can I use? And I came across a pick, and I got to say, I used a pick with the flat getting under there and prying up floor for my whole house. And it saved me a lot of effort if I was doing it with a screwdriver and a hammer or whatever. The idea is to have tools available to you, spending, and especially, I say, go out and buy new and buy $500 worth of tools and whatever. Well, if you have more money than time, that's what you should do. If you have more time than money, maybe hitting yard sales and looking for stuff like that, you can find used tools and whatever. But there is a difference between quality tools and not quality tools. So just kind of be choosy. And you definitely can find quality tools at a yard sale as well. But be aware of what you're looking for. Or, maybe it's Craigslist or Facebook yard sale or whatever, Yeah,
and there's always the right tool for the right job makes a big difference too. So if you find yourself doing something, something that you're frequently doing, don't worry about the price tag. Buy the right shit, buy the right shit for something that you're going to be doing more than once.
Yeah. I mean, my experience buying a $79 axe versus buying a $35 axe brought me many steps ahead, or buying a steel chainsaw that starts, when I pull it versus buying a Husqvarna chainsaw that starts every fifth time I try and get right. That's what you do. Now, some of you might be like, well, I like my Husqvarna. Well, whatever. My fuel line's all rotted and we're crap inside in 2 years and whatever. I thought I was cool buying the Farm Tough one at Tractor Supply. And instead I spent like $100 more to buy, instead of spending 200, I spent 300. And the steel has lasted me for years and years. And it always starts, and I'm not wasting my time on a job. Same thing with a weed whacker, But actually, I found I was fighting on a weed whacker. I ended up buying the same crappy Home Depot one, like 2 years later, because I'm like, I just need a new one that works. And once I started putting in the synthetic oil for the mixed fuel, huge difference, and it lasted a lot longer. So that may be something, to consider too. But we've done episodes on tools, but the idea is pick the right stuff for your homestead, pick things that you're going to use. Now Kevin talks about electricity. Are we going to go there?
It's always frustrating to have to.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's always frustrating to have to buy the same tool again.
Yes.
Yep. So let's talk about electricity.
All right.
Electricity, you're living off grid.
Right.
The idea of living off grid is that you're not connected to the grid, So
that
electricity
is
a really useful. Yeah, electricity is a really useful tool to have in your toolbox. Right. So it can be a little bit tricky, though. It can be a little bit tricky to make your own.
Yes.
So solar seems to be right now for most of the off-grid people.
The most
Solar seems to
practical.
be the way to
Sure.
go. Less expensive and easiest to install, easiest to use. I saw a lot of stuff on wind power, and that's great and everything, but it just
it's limited
for
areas
the money you're spending. The
for it
return
to
isn't
pay.
good.
Right. Now,
Mhm.
me, from a personal point of view, now this isn't true off grid, so that's what you got to understand. For my situation, I choose to have regular power and normal stuff coming from the town for my main supply. However, I do have a backup that is solar that I have set up for. I'm going to work on it a little more. I have little that I can do minimal stuff right now. I plan to do a small amount. Like I actually have a pretty cool setup where I have my house that I live in, and my property came with an old house from like 1910 or something. That's an old farmhouse that I have that I use as a shop and storage and like that. I'm basically going to set that house up with solar so that if I was in a situation where I have to rely on myself, I still have solar in function over there, but to a way smaller scale. For the electricity and convenience that I love out of life, I use way too much that solar's the right choice for me. But I still am not going to be stuck, and I'll have options if I lost the other, where I still can charge batteries and still run tools and still, I have solar on a smaller scale. And that's maybe a way to, look into it. Now, we did do a podcast on solar, if that's something, you guys need to look into. We also did one, I think, on a gasifier that there's a lot of cool books out there on different things you can do. I mean, I do have a generator for my main house if the power goes out.
And being off grid with off grid electricity, a generator is a big deal, even if you're using solar, because a generator, you might be like, all right, we have to turn the generator on to run the TV, the washing machine, and a couple other little things like that, the high demand items, and then just run on solar the rest of the week, or the rest of the time, just run off of those battery packs. And another great thing for that is propane. Obviously, you have to have a supply of propane, but propane is really versatile. You can really do a lot with propane. That you think about your propane grill, and you think about propane. You can run ovens and stoves and all that sort of stuff too. But there's a million and one things you can do with propane power.
Yeah, no, propane is awesome. Having a propane stove extra, or at least a grill with a burner on it, something where you can cook and heat stuff up and, whatever is, that's something a lot of people don't consider. About 2 years ago, when I actually left it at the property that I left, I'm going to buy another one. Lowe's has a fire pit that I think they call it like the Longhorn or something. It's like $210. I was just looking at it again today, but it's got the metal grates, so you can actually wood fire cooking right over it. Now, mind you, it's probably, lead paint from China on those grates that you're cooking your burger in. I mean, I can't make any guarantees for you.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the time the stuff from there has, what is that? The Rufinol, the date rape drug.
Okay.
So just feed your wife first, see what happens,
and then go from there.
And then then if she's fine, then you can eat.
Or maybe if you like your wife, maybe it's the kids that get it first.
Yeah,
and then you go from there. So
take a little.
But the idea is, my point is not that you need to go buy this. My point is find a way to cook.
Right.
My thing. One of the things I kept holding off on doing before I left New York was that I wanted to have, I wanted a pond for the backup water. Now, we also did an episode on doing your own well so that you can do a shallow well with the hand pump. That's a really awesome feature. Being able to do a well, my property actually came with they call it a surface well. Think of, Jack and Jill going up the hill in the bucket, something like that.
Right.
Mine has a big cement block on it, but I can move that cement block and be Jack and Jill in no time.
Perfect.
The idea. So I have, options like that. And that's actually not
and you
my
can always
main well.
You can always get rid of bodies in wells. That's a great spot.
In New York, the way my ground was, I had so much rock. That's a great idea, Kevin. Sorry. I didn't want to just slide past that. But so much rock that I actually dug a pond, which digging a pond in rock is not really the smartest idea. I can tell you that now. But I still had where I could go out with a 5-gallon bucket, bring it in and dump it in a toilet tank, options like that, just think of a way that you're going to be able to keep going on, maybe it's solar and a 110 well pump, whatever.
I'll tell you what,
need an option.
Carrying water sucks. Water is 8.34 pounds per gallon. So a 5-gallon bucket of water is heavy as fuck. Yeah.
Planning on going to the creek, up the street is not going to be the option in the end of the world because it's going to get dirty fast with people polluting, sewer plants not working right, things like that. Know where your water is coming from. And if that is your plan, have a way to filter it. But anyway, go on.
And I'm going to teach you guys, everybody listening right now, I'm going to teach you how to be a plumber. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know.
Shark bite? Oh.
All right. All right. So all a plumber needs to know is that water runs downhill 1/4 inch on 4 feet. Wash your hands before you eat, and payday's on Friday.
Excellent.
You can get yourself a job with all that information right there.
That sounds right. And what if they do payday on Tuesday? No?
That's not how plumbers work, buddy.
Okay. It's got to be Friday for plumbers. All right.
That's right. But when you're looking for properties, you should be looking for lakes, streams, rivers, springs.
Love it. Yep.
A lot of things that people don't talk about when we talk about going off grid is choosing a piece of property that has the resources you're going to need, whether it's wood for firewood, whether it's stone for building stone walls, whether it's, access to water. If you can get all three of those things, that's it, man.
I gotta say,
need to have your own resources if you want to live off grid for a lot more than just growing vegetables.
You're 100%. Now, I will say, I was so sold on a property I looked at, same size as mine. I mean, I have about 14 acres. I saw one that I think was 12 acres, but it had a 3-acre pond. And
nice.
The resource of having fish and all this stuff, having unlimited water that I control in his mind, that's awesome. I ended up, the building was just too small. I couldn't work it with my family. I had to drive an extra 20 minutes to work. I would have drove 20 minutes if the house was right. But, I ended up, the property I got, it's 14 acres, completely fenced and, things, the house worked. Having a second house come with it that I could use for guns and cool things. Both properties I would have been able to do shooting ranges and stuff like that. That's not a problem. But the fact that then I had a surface well available to me, I was like, all right, I have a water supply. Now, if I could fish on my own property, I got to say, man, I would have been happy for that. But, you get what you get. You pick and choose the resources and you decide what you can change and what you can make and whatever.
Right.
Basically, the house, even though it was too small, it was in such a condition that it wouldn't have been something I could add an addition to. It would have been something I would have had to tear down and start over. And it just wouldn't have, made sense. So, but having water as a resource is such a huge asset. But find a solution, just having adequate solar and a well pump that you can do is going to work, if it's a 110 well pump or, find a solution to get to a 220 well pump. I don't know. Solution.
You know what wind power really does well
is pump wells.
Well pumps.
Yes.
Yep. That is really something that it can, I know in the Midwest,
yes.
It's normal, when they have intersecting roads there, they'll build overpasses and they'll dig a hole next to where the overpass is because everything's so flat there, and they'll use that fill to build up the ramp to the overpass on and off. And so every time you pass an overpass out in the Midwest, there'll be a big pond right next to it. And
Nice.
one of the great things to do with those with the wind power is to run that pump, and you can just continually, whenever the wind blows, continually pump water out of your well into your pond. And always have access for your livestock, or always have access for your water for your garden. You have to purify that water if you're going to drink it, but water has a lot of uses when you're living off grid. It's not just for washing your ass.
Well, but yeah, that's important too, though. Don't forget to wash your ass. So the next thing too, like a lot of the wells, like especially wind power and solar, where you don't have a consistent all the time, on demand, depending on your battery storage with solar, what people do is they'll have a holding tank, and they'll pump it up and fill the tank. And then that tank will gravity supply your irrigation or your, whatever. So that's something, you might want to look into if that's, the options where you are. Like I said, I have some other options, maybe if you have the big pond, you don't need to worry about it. But those are things you might want to look into. Now we're actually running kind of long. What, you got any other topics we got to hit here? Or?
I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to go into here.
Security tools, yeah, we got a lot. Gardening, livestock.
Yeah, now obviously, as there's gonna be 1,000,001 mistakes you're gonna make, and it's a lot easier to make it now.
Yeah,
when you have access to the internet, you have access to hardware stores where you can get the equipment you need to
go buy the roll
fence
or the barbed wire or whatever.
Exactly. Having access to that sort of stuff can, if you set up your own homestead and you had an unlimited supply of money in the modern age, you could set it up so you could live for 1,000 years there.
Yes,
but having $1 million and needing all the shit after you have access to it, that's a whole different story.
Right.
So
a solution where you can walk into Home Depot and get the right fitting now versus making something later can mean hours or even, it becoming impossible. That's
right.
So
you guys, I know a lot of you guys homestead. There's actually a lot of people that listen to us that do homestead, and they're probably screaming at us with with their own comments, their own ideas, their own mistakes that they made. If you're one of those guys, send us an email at preppingbadass@gmail.com.
Nice. And don't forget to mention it in the group on Facebook.
Right, and go to the group on Facebook, and even if you're not a homesteader, go to the group on Facebook. And I learn a lot of stuff off that Facebook group, and I love to see people doing things that I'm not doing, posting about, what they're into and how they do it. I really love that Facebook page. I go on there every day and check and see what's new. So
plus you can see pictures of the cool silencer I just bought.
That's right. And that new fancy new truck you got, huh?
Yeah, so you can start Ford bashing.
Yep.
All right.
Yep, there you go. Perfect. Love it.
All right.
All right, so that's everything I got.
Sounds good. So with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
The Survival and Basic Badass Podcast is a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today. Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With FishingBooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. FishingBooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to FishingBooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.